Hello. This is Irvin Griffin. Yes, on this one, no Mr. Griff, no spoken Griff. I'm going to do this straight up and formally. Before I get into this rant, I have been taking a break from making wrestling videos lately. Before you ask, yes, I do plan on finishing my WrestleMania series. I am going to do WrestleMania 26 within the next 2 weeks. Now, WrestleMania 27, I have to admit, I have never seen the entire card. In fact, the only match I've seen in its entirety is the now legendary Undertaker versus Triple H match. So, and you can't really, well, I could do a commentary on just that match, but I want to do a commentary on the whole card. So I'm going to wait till I actually see the whole thing before I make a commentary video on that. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later. I basically took a break from making wrestling videos because I just wanted to make videos to entertain folks, and I wanted to make it on stuff that had nothing to do with pro wrestling directly, because I do have other interests outside of that. I hope you check out my recent collage of videos to my favorite celebrity women. My video tribute to the 90s sitcom Living Single, which starred Queen Latifah, and which I use Queen Latifah rap tune called Ladies Night Out, and 2 videos which are indirectly related to the subject that I'm going to discuss today. Those videos are The Greatest Loves of Angel and The Unrequited Love of Angel and Cordelia. So I hope you check those videos out. Now, to the subject at hand. I must admit, I didn't watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer until well after it was in syndication, which would have been around 2002 or even towards the end of its final season. I'm 37 years old at the time I'm making this video. Today is May 24th, 2012. And even at this age, I still like a good comic here and there, or a good fictional story or series. I first became interested in Buffy, ironically, thanks to the rants of one Pat Robertson, best known as an evangelical Christian, a one-time presidential candidate back in the 80s, a military veteran, and creator of the Christian TV series The 700 Club. One day at work, he was ranting about certain TV shows and how they were a bad influence, one of which was Angel, but he also took jabs at Buffy the Vampire Slayer as well. Now, a little personal information about myself. I grew up a Christian, and some of that influence is still, in fact, a lot of that influence is still with me today. But I also don't like to judge something unless I know what I'm judging. Don't get me wrong. I still believe there is a God. I mean, you're entitled to your beliefs and opinions. I still believe there's a God. I believe there's a higher power. And I also believe that Christianity, when used the way it was intended, can save lives and better people. But I also see that in the wrong hands, it can twist folks. I prefer to think that it saved my life, but I'm also wary of folks who try to take their views from it and push it onto me or other people. In other words, I prefer to think for myself and not necessarily go with the flow or what someone else says on something all the time. Anyway, after listening to this rant, I decided to take in a few episodes. Luckily for me, when I decided to start watching, both Angel and Buffy were in syndication, as I said earlier, and by this point, they were also in season 1 of their respective series, so I could see them from the beginning. My first impression of this show was, while it could influence people who are weak-minded and have low self-esteem to begin with, and no kind of spirituality whatsoever, to me, it was just another piece of quality TV to me. Now, some of the stuff that went on in both shows at times turned me off, but overall, I ended up being a fan of both shows. I am a little more biased towards the Angel series because it was more adult-oriented, but without Buffy, there would be no Angel, so you have to give credit where it's due there. And my impressions of getting back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my impressions as a whole, it was a very smart, very clever, and at times realistic look of how someone with an attitude in real life might handle creatures like vampires or demons or zombies or whatever. The TV series, from what I've heard, is what Joss Whedon originally wanted to begin with the original film back in 1992, starring Kristy Swanson. But one story is that the studio didn't let him go as far as he wanted, so we got this campier version instead. Still, I would recommend to those that are curious about watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I would not totally dismiss the movie with Kristy Swanson, as it does give you some idea of what and who the Buffy character was prior to Sunnydale. So while this movie is nowhere near, it's not nearly as good as the series, it is good for a few laughs, and as I said, it does give you an idea of who Buffy was and who would she become. The actress that played Buffy in the original film, as I said earlier, was Kristy Swanson. But for my money, Sarah Michelle Gellar really defined the role. Sarah officially is the second actress to play Buffy, but she was easily the better of the two because by this time Joss had really refined the role. And while I'm not a huge fan of Sarah Michelle Gellar, to me, she's Buffy. I mean, no disrespect meant to Kristy Swanson because she was first, but to me, Sarah is Buffy. Of course, Sarah Michelle Gellar had been around long before that series, mainly in soap operas, most notably All My Children for several years. But it was her roles in I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream 2, and of course this show that really launched her career. As for my impressions of Buffy, the TV version and the movie version were alike in that neither version of the character wanted this duty at all. They would have been much happier being a high school student, going out on dates, going to dances, having boyfriends, and all the typical stuff that teens do, but instead, she gets this huge responsibility that many adults would rather not do, much less a 16-year-old teen. As I said, Kristy started the role, and she did show that a little bit, but I think Sarah went even deeper into the angst of this character to the point where at times you thought Buffy could even have turned rogue or even bad. In fact, to be blunt, and I don't mean to sound misogynistic or anything, but there were times in the series where she played Buffy like Buffy was just a total bitch, and you just want to slap her. But at the same time, there were other times you just wanted to give her a hug, especially after Angel lost his soul and turned back into Angelus during season 2, or when Joyce Summers, Buffy's mother, played by Catherine Sullivan, suddenly passed away during season 5. The character, not the real actress, I might note. And at times you just want to leap out and help her or keep her from doing something, such as in season 5 when she gave up her life to keep a dimension from destroying the world rather than kill her sister Dawn, which would have also closed that dimension. Or in season 6 when Spike, prior to him getting a soul and becoming more or less one of the good guys, tried to rape Buffy after she ended their brief but sexually intense affair. I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar, you gotta give props where it's due. She was a true actress, and she could make you feel all those things and all those emotions. She could make you love her 1 minute and just totally hate her the next. She made Buffy a very realistic person and kept adding layers to her as the seasons went on. And that was another thing I liked about this series. No one really stayed the same on Buffy as time went on. You could say the same on Angel as well as the main characters and you could say the same. No, let me start that over. You could say the same thing on Angel. When he got his own series, 2 of his allies were big characters from Buffy. Buffy, and I'll be discussing one of them later in this commentary. Now, speaking as a man, I'm going to say this show had some of the most attractive women on TV at the time, and Sarah was no exception. Personally, there are two others that I'm going to talk about later that would have got my attention before Sarah. But I certainly wouldn't have thrown Miss Geller out of bed, or Miss Sarah Prince out of bed. Definitely not. I mean, she still is a very attractive woman. But moving on from Sarah, we go to Nicholas Brendan, who played Alexander Harris, better known as Xander, one of the sidekicks of Buffy and would-be boyfriend for much of the early part of the series. Prior to Buffy, Nicholas Brendan wanted to be a professional baseball player, but an arm injury prevented that. So he turned to acting, and this is where he ended up, which has pretty much been the biggest thing he's done so far. This series is pretty much what, as I don't want to keep repeating myself, but he's pretty much the best thing he's remembered for. Xander was the comic relief guy, though he could be serious when he wanted to be or had to be. He was also a very relatable guy. And what's funny was he annoyed the hell out of me. I mean, there were times I just wanted to just smack this boy. A little bit of the southern boy coming out of me, but at the same time, I could understand him. I mean, he wasn't seeing love in front of him, which was Willow, wanting what he can't have, which was Buffy, and having love in his hands but losing it, which was Anya, a character that came along later in the series, or just plain hiding his insecurities. Xander, basically to me, was Peter Parker without the spider powers, because he was very wisecracking, which he often did to hide his own fears and insecurities. Now, I must admit, in that scene in season 6, when he confronts Spike after he sees film of him and Anya having sex in the Magic Box store, was both funny and serious at the same time. I actually felt for him, but I will admit, I probably would have reacted differently than he did, especially not only discovering that Spike was basically screwing his former fiancée in Anya after he, referring to Xander, left her at the altar on her wedding day, but discovered that Buffy and Spike also had a secret affair. Now, for this, I will revert to my spoken griff persona for a moment. Well, you know what? When I saw that scene, this is what I would have reacted to. When the girls came to break it up, he was like, Xander, what are you doing? Man, shut up! What the hell are you doing? I mean, I know I did you wrong. I know I shouldn't have left you at the altar like that. But my God, could you pick someone better than this Euro piece of trash? I mean, good grief, you bought the first undead thing you can get your hands on. Well, it was good enough for Buffy. Boy, shut up! You stay out of this, and you leave Buffy out of this. What? And this is the point where she bows her head. I ain't gonna lie. If it had been me, I probably would have done this. Oh, hell no! After all the times I said he could never get with a girl like that, you dropped your drawers with this piece of shit? Oh, God. Man, both of y'all a bunch of hoes. Man, shoot. Okay, you did Angel. I can understand that. Riley was a good guy. I've been by your side for years. Almost getting killed, getting my head chopped off, getting my intestines ripped out, everything you can think of. But you sleep with this Captain Peroxide, this Billy Idol knockoff? You sleep with him? You wouldn't even give me a blowjob, bitch. I mean, Fuck you, Anya. Fuck you, Buffy. Oh, I would say go to hell, but you're probably heading there anyway. I'm out. And now, returning to Irvin Griffin. I hope you enjoyed that, or at least got a little bit of humor out of that, because that would have been me in Xander's shoes. I personally thought he didn't go far enough in that scene, but it was what it was. On the reaction to Buffy sleeping with Spike, I always felt that Buffy and Xander's relationships was one of those types that they were friends, but it could have turned into something more. It was one of those type of deals. Buffy viewed him as a friend, but there were times that if you didn't watch the show regularly, you could have believed these two were involved. As passionate as the Angel Buffy affair was, I felt that the Spike character was a better fit because Spike didn't take as much crap off of Buffy as Angel did. Xander also didn't take as much bull from her either, and I think the Buffy character needed that to keep a balance. And, as I said, it was one of those relationships that you knew they were just going to be friends and nothing more, but you could see a situation where it could have turned into something more. The thing with Anya, where Xander left her at the altar, I seriously doubt he would have done if it would have been Buffy or even his longtime friend Willow, as he had a strong bond with both women, even after Willow changed from straight to lesbian, and I'll talk more about that later too. In fact, and I forgot to mention this earlier, Buffy and Xander in the current comic series almost got together, but Xander revealed that he was in love with Buffy's sister Dawn, who at this point is a grown woman. So that's another layer I'm going to have to look into in my spare time, because I heard the Buffy comics are pretty good. But overall, the Xander character wasn't one of my favorites, but he was a pivotal character in the series. And you have to have another male other than Rupert Giles in the mix. Now we move on to Allison Hannigan, best known for the American Pie series and the series called How I Met Your Mother. But she is also still beloved as Willow Thornburg from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I recently saw via YouTube, and I will put the link in the description box below for this, an unaired pilot for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which wasn't much different than what we got, with 3 exceptions. 1, the library was bigger than it was in the actual series we know now. 2, there was no Angel character in the initial pilot. And 3, another actress actually played Willow, and not Allison. She was played by Riff Reagan, but at the request of the studio, they wanted another actress to play Willow. I'm not big on bigwigs sticking their noses in when they aren't really part of the creative process much, but in this case, I have to say they made the right call here. Riff was okay as Willow, but Allison definitely played her much better and was much hotter. I'm sorry, but it's the truth, and I have to admit that. I mean, Riff might very well be a very nice woman and everything, but Allison definitely was better for that role. Back to Willow herself. She began as an attractive, smart, but unsure of herself character. Out of all the Buffy characters, she was probably the most realistic of the bunch, even above Xander. Willow, like a lot of high school students, had potential, but was very insecure of herself. She also had an unrequited love for Xander in those years, much like Xander had an unrequited love for Buffy. The two did briefly have an affair during season 3, referring to Willow and Xander, but it did destroy Xander's relationship with then-girlfriend and former arch-rival Cordelia Chase, and it nearly ended Willow's relationship with Oz, played by Seth Green. But over the series, Willow became more confident in herself and learned she had latent talents with magic, which developed during season 2 of Buffy. In fact, she re-ensouled Angelus, turning him back into Angel on not 1 but 2 occasions. The first during season 2 of Buffy, and the second was during season 4 of Angel. She also changed her sexual preference after her breakup with Oz during season 4 from straight to lesbian. This change was actually well received not only by the gay community, but even straight fans didn't mind this, as it was a very human relationship and not the stereotypical gay relationship. This also showed a dark side to Willow, as she nearly destroyed the world in season 6 after her lover Tara, played by, I believe her name was Amber Benson, was murdered. Now during season 7, the Willow character began a relationship with a slayer named Kennedy, who ironically, and I'll have to look up the actress's name, but ironically the real life actress was actually bisexual herself. Which, that was an ironic twist. She, meaning Willow, also had a flirtation with the Winifred Fred Burkle character, played by Amy Anchor, while guest starring on Angel. Now, on a side note, Fred, up until that point and well after, has always been portrayed as a heterosexual female, but you saw there could have been a potential relationship, as the two characters really had good chemistry. Credit goes to both Amy and Allison for that vibe. Overall, I liked the Willow character. She was funny, attractive, and you can really relate to her. Even when she was Dark Willow, you could feel her pain and even understand why she was doing the things she was. She was a very good character. And on Allison Hannigan, remember I said there was two women that I would put ahead of Sarah as far as, if I had my choice to talk with them and even sleep with them? Allison Hannigan would be ahead of Sarah for me. But I just wanted to put that out there. You'll probably figure out already who the other one is, but you'll find out later on in this commentary. Now, up next is my impressions of the Rupert Giles character, played by Anthony Stewart Head. He started out more or less an old nerd book geek, but there was hints in season 1 that he could be a badass when he wanted to be. We saw more of that in season 2, which I loved immensely, particularly the scene where he, for a moment, was actually kicking Angel's ass, and Angel was in his Angelus persona. He was actually beating his ass after finding out that Miss Calendar, his love interest played by Robia Lamorte, was murdered by Angelus. Perhaps I'm partial to Giles because some of my own family tree is English. So there is some love for those people over there. And by the way, I guess that's why I'm partial to the wrestling commentary of the British Fist. But anyway, Giles was also kind of the dean of boys with the Scoobies, as Buffy's team was affectionately called by their fans. And you needed that older parental type of figure, because Xander, Buffy, and Cordelia, those characters could be out of control at times. And Willow Xander, who was the voice of reason on that team and were probably the most mature on the bunch, sometimes wasn't enough, even though they were in the same age group. Now, his relationship with Buffy was initially Watcher-Slayer, but over time, it became more like father-daughter, because Buffy's father in the series was not particularly active in her life, which is kind of ironic because Sarah, by her own admission, admits that her own father in her real life was not very active in her upbringing, in her life. So there's some parallels there between the real actress and the fictional character. But back to Giles, I also saw a potential relationship, which never happened, but I also saw a potential relationship in Giles with Buffy's mother, Joyce. They did, like I said, it never happened, but they did, however, have a sexual tryst when under a spell during one episode in season 3, which Buffy found out about to her hilarious disgust later when she possessed telepathic powers temporarily. Giles also had a love-hate relationship with Angel. Angel in season 1 was very instrumental in guiding Buffy and helping Giles to guide Buffy. But in season 2, he became Angelus again, and one of his victims was Mrs. Jenny Calendar. Miss Calendar, by the way, was a brief but pivotal character in the series, as her death at the hands of Angel, again as Angelus, would have long-reaching ramifications on everyone in the Scooby's gang. And Willow in particular was affected by her death because Miss Calendar had become not only a mentor figure, but also a mom figure in her life. As her own mother, the characters I mean, and this is by Willow's own admission, was rather distant from her emotionally. And you could see that in season 1, in the final episode called Prophecy Girl, where the Hellmouth creature is coming up in the library, and Willow and Miss Calendar, Giles, and Cordelia are trying to head off the vampires and this creature. When the creature tries to take Willow down into the pit with her, it's Jenny Calendar who holds on. And I noticed the way she was holding on to her. You know how like most people will just grab a hand or grab an arm? Well, she was hanging on to her almost like she was hanging on to her child. So there was definitely a close bond between Will Thornburg and the Miss Calendar character. But getting back to finish it up on Rupert Giles, Rupert Giles was a character that I myself particularly love, and Anthony Stewart Head played him magnificently. Now we come to the one woman in the Buffy series that would be at the head of the line as far as women I would have boned before Buffy on the show, and that is Cordelia Chase, played by Charisma Carpenter. Cordelia, on first glance, is the total opposite of Buffy. But, and this is why I recommend looking at the original film, when you look deeper, Buffy and Cordelia had a lot in common. In fact, when Buffy saw Cordelia, for her character, it had to be like looking into a mirror, because Cordy was a Buffy during her pre-Slayer days. Basically, everything that Buffy gave up to take up her calling, Cordelia embodied it. While rivals for much of Cordy's 3 seasons on Buffy, these two also had a grudging respect for each other. By rights, to be honest, these two really should have been best friends. Cordelia, of course, would go on her own journey during the 3.5 seasons of Angel, a journey of maturity very similar to the one Buffy went on when Cordelia became a seer as a result of Doyle, played by the late Glenn Quinn, say that 3 times fast, passing on his vision powers to her. She still had the brash mouth, opinionated personality, and the love for high-end things, but there was more maturity with the character. I've often wondered if they would have killed the Faith character in season 3 of Buffy, could they have made Cordelia a Slayer? Not that I'm complaining about the way they did the Cordelia character, because it was very effective, but I often wondered, had Faith died, could Cordelia have came up as a Slayer? Possibly. That would have been just as effective in maturing her, and probably would have changed the dynamic between Buffy and Cordelia from frenemies to sisters in arms. Perhaps with Buffy being something of a mentor to Cordy, and who knows what else. Yeah, there has been suggestions. In fact, I even read a very good fanfic story. I wish I still had the link to it. Maybe I'll look it up and post it down there in the description box one day, where this fan wrote a very good, very well done story in which Buffy and Cordelia actually became lesbian lovers during high school. And it was very well done. It wasn't smut or anything like that. It was handled very well, and it stayed true to both characters. Although both characters in that story still defined themselves not as lesbians but as bisexuals. But I won't give it away in case you do find it and read it. Like I said, I may try to find the link to that and let you read it for yourselves. But anyway, back to reality, back to this commentary. If they would have made Cordy a Slayer, I wondered how much it would have changed the dynamic between her and Buffy, because Buffy always seemed to like having another girl who really knew what her struggles as a vampire slayer was, whether it was Kendra, played by Bianca Lawson, or Faith, played by Elijah Dushku. I also find it ironic that the two women also shared a common love interest in, of course, Angel. During the early seasons of Buffy, both women vied for Angel's attention, but Buffy won out during those years. Later, when Angel got his own series, Angel got to see Cordelia's progression as a person, and the two people grew close. Unfortunately, unlike Angel and Buffy, we never got to see a real relationship between these two beyond close friends. And that's rather unfortunate, because I think a Angel Cordelia romance would have rivaled Buffy and Angel. I don't think it would have been better than Buffy and Angel, but I think it would have rivaled it easily. The Cordelia Chase character was, in some ways, a parallel to Buffy in the sense that both women were destined for a higher calling and took different paths to the same goal. This character is still beloved and remembered. As for the actress that played Cordelia, sorry for the tongue twister, Charisma has had some success since that time. And she was in the last Expendables film, that ensemble with guys like Jason Statham, Sylvester Stallone, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Randy Couture, Dolph Lundgren, and several others. She played Jason Statham's love interest, and I heard she's going to be in the next film. Which, by the way, the villain in this one is going to be none other than Jean-Claude Van Damme. But that's another commentary, and somebody else could do that one. Now, this video is going on longer than I expected, but there was no way I could conclude this without talking about the two most significant loves of Buffy's life. I speak, of course, of Spike and Angel. What's interesting between these two is even when both characters were evil, there was always a bit of a rivalry between the two. Angelus, of course, had the bigger reputation and was hated and feared even by other vampires. Together with their respective loves, Darla and Drusilla, they cut a path of blood and pain throughout Europe and Rome. But as I said, there was always a rivalry between the two, particularly over Drusilla. While she mainly stayed with Spike, who was played by Jay Marsters, I hope I said the man's name right, there was always this obsession she had with Angel, especially when he was with Angelus. Spike, ironically, had a reputation in his own right, having killed 2 vampire slayers, but was always seen as second fiddle to Angelus. And this really bothered the Spike character. This isn't unlike the quiet rivalry in the early to mid 80s between Batman and the first Robin, which was Dick Grayson, when Robin felt he would always be in Batman's shadow when he was a hero in his own right. Despite the bad split, he would always have Batman's back. And that's the way it was with Spike and Angel. Whether they were good or whether they was evil, it seems these two would always be intertwined in some way. And they would always have each other's back in certain situations. Buffy, of course, had relationships with both vampires. In fact, but when Sarah Michelle Gellar, the woman who played Buffy, was asked which romance she would have preferred Buffy to be in, she said without hesitation, Angel. In fact, in the now famous episode, I Will Remember You from season 1 of Angel, Sarah was legitimately crying because she felt those two should end up together. And to give you a little background on that episode, basically in the episode, Buffy comes to visit Angel after Angel quietly was in Sunnydale without directly greeting her. These two are attacked by some demon who Angel eventually kills, but the blood of this demon mixed in through a cut on Angel's hand and turns him human. Angel and Buffy spend one whole day together, both talking about his situation, and of course, you know they had to do the nasty. You know Angel had to get, now that he could enjoy it without losing his soul. Oh, you know he had to wax that ass. But in this episode, Angel, after nearly being killed by the same demon and being saved by Buffy, felt that these two were not really destined to be together. So he asks the oracles to take back the day and erase all memory of it except his. Well, this scene apparently really affected Sarah, the actress that played Buffy, because she felt these two really should be together. And you could see the tears that were crying was really legitimate. She cried to the point where David Boreanaz, who played Angel, if you listen close, actually called her Sarah instead of Buffy. This scene, despite this botch, was left in. I mean, the mistake is there, but they left it in. The scene was so powerful, they didn't want to touch it. So they left that botch in. And it is considered by many fans the most powerful, one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful scene, is one of the most powerful scenes in the history of either show. Now, back to the love triangle. We pretty much discussed Angel Buffy, so I want to get into Spike Buffy. Let me say right off the bat that I said this earlier, I prefer Spike Buffy because, much like Xander, Spike had a way to keep Buffy in check when she would go into her mood swings. I do have to agree with Sarah in the way the relationship was done in season 6, that it was very demeaning. As I said earlier, the attempted rape scene just left a very bad taste in my mouth, as I felt it was totally unnecessary. And it just wasn't needed. Now, as for which one you prefer, like I said, especially with the way they rebuilt it in season 7, I prefer Spike Buffy, but it's all in what you like. Spike and Buffy's relationship began as enemies, and this is talking about the whole series. Then as basically friends with benefits during season 6 after Buffy was resurrected from the dead. Then as true friends after Spike gained his soul in season 7. I mean, and only in his final moments did Buffy finally admit she had feelings for Spike. She even said, "I loved you. I love you." And then I love Spike's response to her when he says, "No, you don't. But thanks for saying it." Of course, Spike would return on Angel for its final season, and you knew both vamps, even though they were on the same side, the rivalry would continue between these two, especially concerning Buffy. And as I keep saying I would have preferred Spike with Buffy, but it wouldn't have upset me if Angel would have gotten the nod. While I do think Spike Buffy's relationship was heading into a more romantic zone, Angel Buffy was definitely the classic romance, so I would have been cool with either one. Overall, I really grew to love this show and its spinoff Angel. and I still watch the reruns of certain episodes when they are on. Well, that's really all I have to say about this show, and I hope you enjoyed this lengthy commentary. Until next time, play the game, bring the pain.